Hi everyone! In this video, I will be going step by step through the process of making maple syrup. This video is perfect for beginners who are looking to make maple syrup at their own home using resources that they may already have. You will learn how to identify maple trees, tap the trees, collect sap, boil sap, finish and store your maple syrup, and some suggested uses. There are many steps to maple syrup making, but it is fun and super rewarding. Did you know that North America is the only place on Earth where pure maple syrup can be collected, and that maple syrup making dates back to the indigenous people in the regions of America and Canada? Before we begin, here is a checklist of the materials that you will need to produce maple syrup at your own home. Now that you know what you need, let's begin. To make maple syrup, you must first identify maple trees. Maple trees are the only trees that can be used to produce maple syrup. Identifying maple trees is easiest in the summer or fall by the distinguishing feature of the maple leaf. However, the maple syrup season is in the winter, which can make identifying trees a bit more difficult because there are no leaves on the trees. Don't worry though, I have a few tips that can help you properly identify maple trees no matter the season. To identify a maple tree, first look at its branches. You can see here on the left that this branch has opposite branch and bud patterns, while the branch on the right has alternating branches. Opposite branches make a V shape, while alternating branches move up step by step. Maple trees will always have opposite branching and bud patterns in that V shape. Because branches can sometimes snap off, look for any scarring or places where a branch used to be to make sure that you are not confusing the type of branching pattern. If you are unsure, try looking at a few branches on different parts of the tree. Once you have identified a maple tree, you can use some other distinguishing features to determine if you have a red maple tree or a sugar maple tree. Both trees produce excellent sap for maple syrup. The buds on a sugar maple are sharp and brown, while red maple tree buds are red and blunt. Additionally, the bark on a sugar maple tree is dark and gray with many ridges. On a red maple tree, the bark is lighter shades of gray and brown, smooth in young trees, and shaggy on older trees. The twigs of a sugar maple are chocolate colored, but red on a red maple tree. You can use this T-chart to easily compare it between these types of maple trees. The next step in the process is to tap your maple trees. Trees are generally tapped in early February. The temperature should be above freezing during the day and below freezing at nighttime. Daytime temperatures between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny conditions are optimal for sap production. Once buds appear on the tree branches, the season is over and the sap will be bitter. For this step, make sure that you have the same size drill bit that you have tree taps. For example, if you have 5/16 inch tree taps, you need a 5/16 inch drill bit. You are able to put one tap for trees with 12 to 18 inches of diameter, 2 taps for trees 18 to 32 inches in diameter, and 3 taps for a tree greater than 32 inches in diameter. Do not put more than 3 taps on one tree to ensure the health of the tree. If a tree has been tapped in previous years, drill at least 1 foot above or below the tap and at least 6 inches to the side to avoid tree decay. Once you have found a location to tap, use the drill at an upward angle and drill approximately 1.5 to 2 inches into the tree. Drilling upwards prevents sap pooling and bacteria growth. Taking your tree tap and a hammer, gently hammer the tap into the tree. Go slowly to make sure that the bark of the tree does not split. Congratulations, you have now successfully tapped your tree. Once you have tapped your maple trees, it is time to collect the sap. Always use thoroughly cleaned food-grade containers to collect your sap. For my syrup collection, I use containers used for beer brewing, but any plastic or glass containers intended to store food work well. Place your container by the base of the tree and insert the tap into the bucket. Make sure that your container is covered to prevent rain, snow, or dirt from getting into the sap. If your bucket does not have a lid with a hole like is shown here, you can use a plastic bag with small holes for the taps to make sure that your sap does not have dirt or added water. If water gets into the sap, you will need to spend more time boiling it down. A tree will go through 8 to 10 runs in a season where each tap will produce about 1 gallon of sap. Over a few weeks, one tap only removes about 10% of a tree's sap, which keeps the tree healthy. You can see in these videos how the sap is flowing quickly into the container because the weather is warm and sunny. On days with warm weather and higher temperatures, sap will accumulate quickly. It is important to check your buckets to make sure that they are not overflowing on these days. Proper storage of the sap is critical to make sure that it does not spoil. Sap can stay outside in cold temperatures, equivalent to the temperature of a refrigerator. If temperatures get warm, collect the sap and store it in the refrigerator until you plan to boil it. Sap can stay in the refrigerator for up to a week before it spoils. Spoiled sap looks cloudy rather than translucent or clear. If your sap does spoil, discard it and wash your collection buckets. A helpful hint to home maple syrup makers is to collect sap over a few days and boil it down all at once to make sure that you have enough sap to produce syrup. Before you begin to boil your sap, make sure that you have at least 5 gallons. Boiling down your sap can be a time-consuming process, but it is largely very hands-off. Transfer your sap into large pots and place them on the stove. Turn the burners on high and allow the sap to come to a vigorous boil. Do not stir the sap as it boils. Refill the pots with sap as needed. The sap you collect is approximately 98% water, so by boiling the sap, you remove the water in the form of water vapor and leave only the sugar. Because so much water is evaporated, use your stove vents to get rid of the excess steam. As your sap boils down, it should become thicker and darker in color. You can see here the sap on the right has been boiled down longer than the sap on the left, therefore is darker and thicker. When this happens, it is important to be attentive to your sap to make sure that you do not let it go too far. That would make maple sugar. Making maple syrup at home is done in small batches, so be aware that small amounts of sap go too far faster than a larger batch of sap would. In general, it takes about 48 gallons of sap to produce 1 gallon of maple syrup. This ratio is particularly what makes pure maple syrup so expensive. Before you finish your sap, thoroughly clean the jars that you plan to use for your sap with soap and water. Mason jars work best in my experience to keep the sap sealed and prevent spoiling. Additionally, set up a filter for your sap. Maple syrup filters are woven filters that filter out dirt and sediment that can get into the sap, as you can see here. This is a critical step that you cannot overlook. Setting up your jars and filter before your sap is finished helps to make an efficient process when transferring your finished syrup. When your sap begins to look darker, start to monitor the temperature with a candy thermometer. Monitoring the temperature ensures that enough water has been removed from the syrup so that it is the proper density and will not spoil. Watch the sap closely until the temperature reads 218 degrees Fahrenheit. Before this, you will see the color darken and the syrup may become foamy like is shown here. Turn the syrup off the heat. Pour the hot syrup through the filter and into your jar. Be sure to pour slowly and be careful not to touch the hot syrup. Put the cap on the jar immediately to make it seal. To make sure that the syrup does not spoil, store it in the refrigerator in sealed containers. Congratulations, you have now made maple syrup. Now that you have created your own maple syrup, you may be wondering about what is in your syrup and how you may be able to use it. As long as you have not added anything to your sap or bottle, your maple syrup can be considered all natural. Maple syrup contains many minerals and vitamins such as calcium, potassium, iron, vitamin B2, vitamin B5, and biotin. In 1 tablespoon of maple syrup, there are 52 calories, 13.5 grams of carbohydrates, and 0.1 grams of fat. There are many ways that you can use the maple syrup that you have produced. You may use it to top pancakes or waffles. Maple syrup is a natural sweetener, so it can be used to sweeten oatmeal, drizzled on top of yogurt, or stirred into tea. Maple syrup can also be used in recipes such as homemade granola, homemade hot chocolate, maple butter, or maple caramel. There are plenty of uses for your homemade maple syrup. Before you begin to make your own syrup, here are some helpful tips. Thank you for watching this instructional video on how to make maple syrup. Even as a beginner or at your own home, maple syrup is a delicious treat that you too can learn to make. Happy syrup making!